My name is Edward King, and I'm a candidate for the Civil Court of the City of New York, and I'm running countywide in Kings County.
So, you are a community advocate and a U.S. Army veteran.
Yes, ma'am.
Why are you running for civil court judge?
I'm running for civil court judge because I believe that, number one, is that what people need on the civil court is someone who has the sensitivity, the knowledge, the experience, and the maturity to handle their case when it comes to the civil court. As you know, the civil court is a court where they have covered basically three areas. One is going to be claims of $25,000 or less. Two, landlord and tenant. Three would be small claims. And basically the people that go to those type of claims are just everyday people who have everyday problems. And you need someone who kind of understands what goes on. And I believe by having those qualities, because I've been a lawyer for over 35 years, I've handled hundreds of cases. And most of the cases are for people who are just everyday people just like me. And those are people from Bed-Stuy, East New York, Canarsie, Flatbush. You name it, I've represented them. And as a result of that, I think they need that kind of a person who sits on the bench.
You say your experience is based on your life experience.
Correct.
And strong principles that guided you throughout your legal career.
Yes.
So what is your life experience and what are those principles?
Okay. My life experience is that I'm basically, even though I'm a little older now, I'm a city kid. I was born and raised here in New York City. And most of the experiences I've had basically are and opportunities that I've received because of people who were in the civil rights community and also in the progressive community. That means they created opportunities for me. They created opportunities for me to go to school, to become educated. And because of that, I understand that I have to basically pay back as I have a debt to them. Because without it, I would never be where I am today. The other experiences that I have is that I'm also an Army veteran. That helped me out a lot. I was in the military police, so don't tell me to lie. And the second thing is that I'm a deacon at my church, and I'm a founding member of Brooklyn Community Church. And one of the principles we have in terms of the church and what we believe in is that you have a responsibility to help others. So in any way you can, you must provide that help. So that is why I tell you when I say I apply my experiences, my life experiences as a military policeman, as basically a lawyer for all these different communities. Additionally, I have to let you know that I have worked in the court system. I was a civil court law clerk for many years, working for two separate judges. And thereafter, I went to a higher court working as a law secretary to a Supreme Court justice here in Kings County. And lastly, I was an administrative law judge for a city agency. Would you like to know the agency? I'll tell you anyway.
Okay.
The Parking Violations Bureau. And the reason I tell you that is because you really there deal with I've heard all of the stories and all of the problems, but what you find out is most people, they're just people. And as you know, it's difficult to park here in New York. It's very easy to get a summons, but you have to understand the reasoning behind it. Now, it doesn't mean that you're not responsible. It just means that when you look at it, you have to take into account all the different factors and understand as a New Yorker what really happened in the situation.
And as a civil court judge, is there anything you would do that wasn't done before?
I think that, and I would suggest, and I would love to advocate for this as a civil court judge, and I would like to do it right now as well, is that the most important factor for most people is their time. I hate to wait folks' time. It's not good. So if we know that someone's coming to court for the first time and they're going to have to come back again, let's get them into the courthouse as quickly as we can, and then let's get them out of the courthouse, just in case they have to come back again. They won't waste time. Secondly is that one of the major problems that we have with most of the people who come to the civil court is that they're unrepresented. So if that's the case, then if there is an initiative right now to help people who don't have lawyers, because there's no constitutional right to have a lawyer, but there is an initiative to try to help and to try to assign people counsel. So if we could do that before they come into the process, it would be much more helpful. And I believe that basically, if you are courteous to people, you move things along a lot quicker than if you're discourteous and or disrespectful.
And you worked in the court system as a law assistant and principal court attorney.
Yes.
And went to private practice.
Yes.
Now you want to go back into the court system.
That's right.
What brings you back?
Well, what brings me back is I can tell you two things, and one is practical and one is more idealistic. The practical part of it is that I am married to a Supreme Court justice, and I spent the better part of my earlier career making sure that she became very well placed in the system, and she wanted to advance, and I wanted to support her. But now that she's in her place, she says to me, now it's your turn. If you really want to do it, go ahead and do it. And this is something I've always wanted to do, and now I've had an opportunity, and I'm taking it.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And you believe in the principle of to whom much is given, much is required. How do you live by that principle? And how will you continue to live by it as a civil court judge?
Well, presently, besides my legal practice, I also deal with community organizations and churches and other civic groups as it relates to, for example, 3 specific areas. One, it's for people who have been formerly incarcerated who have felonies and misdemeanors. I try to assist in getting them what they call a certificate of relief from forfeitures and disabilities or certificates of good conduct. That will help them in terms of licensure and other things that they're disqualified from, so that at least they can have a shot in life. The second thing is that since a lot of my practice deals with landlord and tenant, I do give lectures and I have clinics where I try to help folks who have landlord and tenant problems. And I tell them, and it doesn't always have to be the tenants. Sometimes it's the landlords. We have a lot of small landlords who are just making it in this city and they need help. So you try to help them as well. Give them information, and hopefully by giving them this information will allow them to basically live their lives. And the third group, and the most important for me, is the senior citizens. I don't know if you know this or not, but now I feel like senior citizens are under attack. And what I mean by that is that a lot of senior citizens, they need services now. So when they want to go for their hearing aids, their eyewear, their dentures, they go to providers. And of course, most senior citizens think they're covered by Medicaid, so they ask them to sit down and fill out paperwork. What they don't realize is that, and they do realize a little bit later, is that as they're filling out their paperwork, about a month later, they get a bill from a credit card company. And they actually have a credit card bill. And if you know most seniors, they're very responsible, so they would rather pay the credit card bill as opposed to taking care of the medication or even their rent. So we don't need our folks under attack for this, no matter who they are and where they reside. So these are things that I apply myself to try to give them some assistance. And I think by doing that, it makes me feel good, and it also is good for our society. Lastly, I think that as a judge, you have a responsibility to make yourself available to the people. You can't necessarily tell them what you're going to decide in the case, but you can give them information about the system, how it works, and what they need to do in order to properly navigate it. And that's what I think my role is. That's what I would do, and that's who I am.
There are 120 civil court judges, but not all of them sit on the bench. Many people don't know how this system works, so people don't understand. Could you tell me where else civil court judges sit?
Well, civil court judges could be assigned to the criminal court, or they could be assigned to the family court. In the criminal court, most civil court judges handle what they call the arraignment parts. That's when you first get arrested. You come up, and that person, that judge, sets bail. As you know now, which I think is very good, there is a new Bail Reform Act that's been passed and will shortly be coming into effect. And where you won't have any problem with setting bail. There is a problem, however, I believe, in the discretionary part of that statute. But I think you need somebody there that has a certain amount of experience and also common sense to know that you have to, while you would want to make sure that you don't misuse the bail policy, because the purpose of bail is to ensure the return of the defendant. You want to also make sure that use that system with common sense as it relates to people that come through that system.
You say as a civil court judge, you will ensure fairness and justice for all.
Yes.
Could you tell me more about how you are going to do that?
Well, what I would do is, and I think that most people, is that they need the three things. You have to listen to what they're saying. I don't know if you know this or not, but if you ever go to the civil court has basically three types of individuals, not types of individuals, three aspects of individuals that happen when they go to the civil court. The first is most people that go to the civil court are not represented by lawyers. The second thing is that most of the people who attend the civil court are females. And the third thing is that most of the people who attend civil court are basically minorities. So what happens is that most of the folks that come, they don't quite know exactly what to say, but they know that they have either a claim or a defense. And as a result of that, you really have to listen to understand what they're trying to say. Second thing is that everybody wants to be treated fairly. So by listening to both sides and making sure you have a good understanding of one side versus another, or both sides and both sides together, you can come out with the third thing I think that's required is a just result. And that's the only thing you can really hope for.
And as an attorney who has assisted formerly incarcerated individuals, what do you think of the cash bail for all misdemeanors and many nonviolent felonies?
I think that generally speaking, that it's a good policy. That's what I was just saying before. It's a good policy because whether it's for small amounts of marijuana consumption, whether it's for having an open container, whether it's for going to the bathroom on the street, whether it's for whatever little infraction may be, it's a good policy because these are basically infractions that are not necessarily criminally intent or based. Some of them are criminally intent and have criminal intent and are criminally based. And I believe that you look at the record of the person to make sure that, and what your only concern is they're coming back. That's it, to answer the case. That's all you're really looking at. However, you also have to use a little common sense as it relates to what you're doing and who's before you. You don't want someone who's walking around with a .45 automatic and you want to make sure that person is there, and you want to make sure you look at the person's record. You got to look at a lot of different things because what you do has an effect on the community at large, and you're responsible because not only you're the judge, not only for the person before you, but you're the judge for the people of the city of New York. That's why you're there. They elected you to be a judge, and they want you to make the decisions for them. So
do you support the closing of Rikers Island?
Rikers Island. The issue with Rikers Island is that it's a place to house prisoners, and you want more community-based type situations. But then it becomes a NIMBY situation. NIMBY being not in my backyard. So then what happens? Where would you put a jail? Would you put it next to your school?
That goes to the next thing I wanted to ask.
Where would you put it? So in a way, it's good, and it's the concept is good, but the practicality of actually and allowing a new policy, it's very difficult. You open up a whole new thread of questions and issues that have to be dealt with. So I can't say whether I support it or not. I just recognize what the problem is, and then again, you don't want to have to. Do you know that you have to pay to get onto Rikers Island and pay to get off? Did you know that?
No.
When you go to Rikers Island, you have to usually take a bus or a train, and then you have to take a bus onto the island and a bus off, for which you have to pay the fare.
So what do you suggest they should do about the Rikers Island issue?
Well, if I were to have the power and control, I think what we should do is if we're going to use also enforcing the policy of no cash bail set, we can keep more community settings, meaning that instead of going from the precinct to central booking to Rikers Island, if bail is set, since no bail is set, we can make more localized policies so that the release is done at the police station. And then instead of having travel from point A to point B, use the video system, meaning that you have cameras and video, and then the arraignment takes place at this precinct house, and either bail is set or not set, and the person is released or not released. If there's something that's more violent or difficult, then I think you need a more secure setting. Because for the non-violent things, yes, no problem. For the violent crimes, you have to keep a more secure setting. And I think that's the best thing to do.
And you say you fight for foreclosures and predatory lenders in your community.
Right.
How will that experience help you as a civil court judge?
Civil court doesn't necessarily have that jurisdiction. However, if you become an acting Supreme Court justice and you have this kind of situation, then you know what the predatory lending pattern is, and you have to look at the facts of the case. Obviously, you can't prejudge the case, but you will know what you see. You will also know how it affects in terms of a civil court judge is that we have situations, and again, it may not come within your purview specifically at that point, but it will come at some time. The third party, you ever heard of the third party transfer program? Oh, third party. Well, the third party transfer program is a program where the city of New York, buying through the Department of Finance, can declare your 1 to 4 family home as being distressed if you fit one of 3 categories. And the first category is if you owe 15% or more of the assessed value of a house and debt owed to the city. The second reason is that if you have 8 C violations pursuant to HPD regulations, HPD, that there are 3 types of violations: A, B, or C. A being least hazardous, B being the middle level hazard, and C being the most hazardous. If your building has 8 or more, your building can fit in within that program. And if you owe the city $1,000 or more in either ECB violations and the like, then the city can declare your property as being distressed, and you can lose it. Moreover, if the city declares one house on the block to be distressed, they can declare all the property, all the houses on that block to be distressed. So how this affects you is that if you lose title to your house, eventually, because the city can then turn those liens into a foreclosure action and then basically move to foreclose, you lose title. And instead of being an owner, now you're a tenant. And if you become a landlord and tenant, then you may end up in the civil. If you become a tenant, rather, then you will end up in the civil court.
Oh,
so I didn't think you know that. Yeah.
And you have 35 years of experience,
Yes.
as you mentioned before,
Yes.
of law experience. What is it that you want to bring to the bench that has never been there from your 35 years of experience?
I think that it's been there, but not enough of it. And that is that you just want to be treated fairly. You know, sometimes when you walk into a courtroom, you feel intimidated, and you feel that no one gives you the respect that you're due as a citizen of this city. And that's the main thing that you have to bring, is you have to bring a great level of respect for all the people that appear before you. Because you represent, not, as I indicated, you are not just a representative, a judicial representative. You are actually, in person, the representative of the people for whom you serve. They come to you to make decisions about their lives. So this is a very important position, and I believe that this is what needs to be brought. So to say that it's never been there, I can't say that. But I can't say there's not enough. I can also say, with all honesty, that and very clearly, is that there aren't that many black males who are part of the system. If you've been to the civil court, I think if you find 1 or 2, you have a lot. So I think that you need people who are representative, that show diversity, and that give a level and sense of fairness to that court. And I believe that by becoming a civil court judge, I would do that. I consider myself a role model, and I want other people just like me, male and female, hopefully black and white, but specifically minorities, to follow my lead. Become judges, become officials, become people who are responsible and who are leaders. And I think that will make our society much better.
And many people may not know that this election for civil court judge is very different from other political elections.
Yes.
You're not going out there and saying, vote for me, or like slamming your opponent. You're not campaigning and saying, vote for me. Many people don't understand. Could you tell me how the election for civil court is different from the political elections?
Well, as an attorney and as a judicial candidate, it's just as you said. You're not to denigrate the other side. You're not to show that they are weak in some areas, or they have not just weaknesses, but they really don't have the what you could call, I guess, the gumption, the things that are necessary in order to be a judge. Mm-hmm. But you can talk about your qualifications. You can talk about your experience. You can highlight almost all the things that you need to highlight as it relates to your ability to be a judge and to properly represent the people of the city of New York, especially in Kings County.
And in 2017, you received the Man of the Year. That was an award recognizing you as pro bono work, or recognizing you for your pro bono work at Brooklyn community, that you were serving people for free, basically.
Yes.
So how do you feel about that?
Well, it was hard, but it's part of what I believe as I told you, much is given, much is required. And as part of my, as I indicated, what I believe, what I think that God specifically requires me, because He's given me a lot. You know, a lot of people that I grew up with are no longer alive, and they either been taken away by drugs or violence. I'm a testament to that, because I told you I was one of five, and of my five sisters, and three of them are deceased now because of drugs, and one is disabled now because of drugs. So I know that one would say I've been blessed, you know, and I understand with this blessing comes responsibility. So I don't mind. In fact, I welcome it, and that's why I do what I do, and at Brooklyn Community Church and other places.
And do you think because you've done a lot for your community, do you think becoming a civil court judge, you will still be able to do the things that you've been doing for your community?
Well, I don't think you should disengage from your community because you become a judge. I think you should still engage, meaning that you should still present yourself. Let folks talk to you. You may not be able to give them advice about their specific case, but it doesn't mean that you can't tell them about the law. It doesn't mean that you can't direct them to what they should do and where they should go. You can't necessarily, as a judge, in order to be fair, saying, I'm taking your side against someone else, but you can give information, as I said, and I think that's what's the key, mostly. There are so many things that, with the right information, people will do. I consider most people very smart. Maybe somebody else doesn't, but I do. And I think, especially New Yorkers. So if you give them the information, they'll know what to do with it thereafter. So I believe as being a judge, it won't stop what I'm doing. I'm going to continue to be who I am. I'm still going to come out. I'm still going to be able to engage folks. I will shake your hand. No, I don't ride on a cloud. I take the subway. And I'm still the same person that I will still be the same person that I am right now. It won't change me at all.
But you'll not be able to represent them anyhow.
No, it can't represent anyone. No, but you can direct them to where they need to go and what they need to do. And I think that's something that any person, not just a civil court judge, should be able to say. You should not become an official and then, after you become official, separate yourself from the people. Can't do that.
So is there anything else you like to let people know?
Sure. I like to let them know to vote for Edward King, as a civil court judge countywide on June 25th. Most people don't know the election cycle has changed. Instead of being in September, it's now June, which is about a couple of weeks from now. So don't forget to vote. If you want to know more about me, please go to King4 Kings County, king4kingscounty.com. You can look up everything about me. I'm on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and all the other social media platforms. And just give me a call or give me a note, and I will respond. And I hope that you vote for me on June 25th, and I hope to be your next civil court judge from Kings County on June 25th. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you later.
Okay.